Hi, everybody, and welcome to the webinar on addressing morale issues in the workplace. The workplace can be a really either a positive experience or a negative experience, and it's quite unsettling to see the research that's happening in the workplaces about the increase in mental health or increase in mental health issues and the decrease in morale. So what we're going to do today is look at some of these things, and hopefully this information will help you, and if you're a manager and if you're an employee, to help you manage morale issues in the workplace. So Alexander H. Layton stated that morale is the capacity of a group of people to pull together persistently and consistently in pursuit of a common purpose. So wherever you're working right now, just take a moment to reflect. What is the morale of the workplace? Are people pulling together persistently or with persistence and consistently in pursuit of the common purpose? The challenge that happens in workplaces today is that if they don't have a common purpose, or if that common purpose is not communicated to everyone in the workplace, well, then one would question, it makes sense of how can we have a high morale in the workplace. Those workplaces that do tend to have a high morale, the vision and the mission and the goals and the objectives are quite clearly communicated to every employee, whether they're the frontline manager or they are the high-end executive. The cost of low morale is quite high. Now, this stat is a bit dated in 2014, which I think would be a bit sad. It's probably going to be worse. And these are American stats, but I think here in Australia, they would be pretty much the same. The Gallup organization, which is a very well-respected organization, research organization throughout the world, estimates that there are 22 million actively disengaged employees, costing the American economy as much as $350 billion per year in lost productivity, including absenteeism, illness, and other problems that result when employees are unhappy at work. $350 billion per year, that's a lot of money, people. And if you're an employer, that's money just going down the toilet. And only the management really are part of the blame, I believe, because creating a culture, creating the morale really starts at the top, which needs to trickle down to middle management as well as frontline management. It's also disconcerting to see that 22 million people are actively disengaged employees, meaning that they probably don't care. So I think it's something to reflect on as we go through the material. So when do morale problems occur? Morale problems can occur when a negative event within the workplace occurs, such as a firing or downsizing or another dramatic and unwanted change. I remember working in a sense, a .com company back in 2000, 2001. And I won't go into details, but they were going through a redundancy because just the situation of the whole .bomb era. And I was pretty much the first person on the list. And I knew that it was coming for various circumstances. And the CEO called me in, and it was no surprise. We had a really great relationship. What was interesting observing is how the morale of that place, which it was actually probably one of the best environments I've ever worked in, the culture that was created. But then just that fear of people getting ready to be made redundant changed the whole morale of the workplace, mainly because this whole downsizing and this dramatic and unwanted change. And it was almost like breaking up a big family. Another trigger for morale problems is the promotion of an unpopular employee, or a promotion when there were other candidates for the position who were overlooked. And I see this happening a lot in workplaces as well. And then another trigger would be arguments or other forms of tension among staff members or even between staff and management. So it's something to take into account. Now, these are quite general, but they are pretty much the crux of where morale problems stem from. Company morale problems, this is a really quite a critical situation. So when an entire company loses its motivation for any reason whatsoever, this falls under the heading of emergency, and action is required immediately to prevent it from becoming terminal. The saying of, one bad apple can really have an impact on the rest of the fruit of the basket. It's very true. So as leaders and managers, you need to be very aware of what's happening in the workplace. And when you start seeing this spiral of demotivation, which then will go into a low morale, and you need to figure out how you can circumvent that situation. Which leads us to various practices for managing morale. So the first one is, look, just accept that improving morale means that you have to manage it every day. You can't just start and stop. The second one here is be honest. Be honest with your staff. I think that's the one thing at that workplace that was where I was being made redundant, along with many others. The CEO and the vice president, they were very honest with what was happening. People just kind of knew. And not that it made it any better or any easier, but at least there was an honesty amongst the place. And that's what I have to say that CEO was just 100% spot on with. Another one is be clear when instructing your associates. And also that comes back to that communication to make sure that when you're instructing them, they actually understand. And as we live in a multicultural society, we cannot assume that because they're from another country or another culture that they understand what we're saying. Give your employees that the sense, give the employees that the sense that their jobs are important. So many times people come to work and they're doing something, but they don't quite understand what they are to the overall aspect. I had this situation a few years ago, a company that I worked for, actually I'm still doing some part-time stuff with, that I didn't quite understand where I fit in the whole microcosm. I had been away from the workforce for quite some time in the education industry. And, when I first started, I didn't do very well because I didn't quite see where I fit in. I didn't think that I knew my teaching was important to the students firsthand. I didn't see how important I was in the whole microcosm with the other campuses. And once I was sat down and said, look, you're really important because just like not just you, but every other person on campus, we're part of a team and, you're a cog in that. And when I was explaining that to me, I was like, okay, now I get it. And you need to do that in your organization, whether you're a manager and if you're an employee, you're not quite sure, ask your boss of where do I fit in this bigger scheme of things? Because then if you are a leader, your employees will understand where they fit into the system. The larger the organization, it's even more critical to express that, because some people will go, well, it's a big organization, I won't be missed. And that might be the furthest from the truth. Instill in your team a sense of teamwork. Teamwork's really, really important. And, there's so many team building activities, team building consultants out there. I don't want to go into that. But if you're a leader or you're a team leader or a manager in your organization, you need to instill in your team that there is this sense of teamwork, that without one person, it's going to fall over. And get your employees involved in the problem solving. I think that's so important because many times actually, employees will see a problem from a different perspective. I've seen this very often that managers and executives, they will discount what input an employee has because they may not have a degree, they may not seem that intelligent, all this stuff. I'm not saying that it's correct at all. What I am saying is that you need to get these employees involved and listen to what they say. They will bring a different perspective. And if you value them and you tell them that you value them and they can see that you're actually taking on board some of the things that they're suggesting, which are actually great solutions to some problems, they will then feel rewarded, and you'll start having this spill-on effect that morale will start to increase or get better. Conduct timely and thorough and effective performance appraisals. So many times, I can look back on my jobs and I could go for a year or two and never really get an official performance appraisal. And that becomes important too, because no matter what people say, I think for the most part, they just want to know, how are we doing? And obviously, when you're a new employee, there's usually that traditional probationary period, and that's usually a set of quite nervous situation, because they know that they're on probation and they may feel that they're constantly being watched. After they get through their probationary period, they know that they're going to get appraised, but sometimes they just don't know when. So you need to make sure timely, thorough, and the key word there is effective performance appraisals. Even to the extent that you may ask one of your employees or any of your employees, depending on the industry and everything, how would you like to be appraised? What do you want me to really look at to make sure that you're developing as an employee, as a human being in the workplace? Because when they see that they're developing in things that they also want to develop, they'll feel a sense of empowerment. So try to find that balance of when you're appraising the employee, what are things that you must appraise them on from your own job perspective? And then even ask them, what would you like me to appraise you on for your own personal growth and development within this organization? I love this one. Accept the fact that employees like to gossip. It's the old water cooler story where they all gather around the water cooler or the coffee kettle and just kind of catch up on the office gossip. I don't think it's ever going to go away. I don't say it's right or wrong. It just is. So when you accept the fact that employees like to gossip, you just need to be aware and kind of keep your ear to the ground of who's saying what. And also to make sure that it's not derogatory or it's not anything negative that could, once again, affect the morale of the organization. So please don't put your head in the sand just because, we are saying accept the fact. I think you still need to be aware of what is being said throughout the organization. Use your own experience to solve problems before they happen. You need to be proactive in the workplace. Morale is such an important thing. And with now the days of social media and all this different kind of, outside noise that is impacting us, you need to use your experience to really solve the problems before they happen. And part of that is being able to recognize those problems before they get out of hand. Develop a suggestion system in your group or a suggestion box. Sometimes people don't like to speak up. It might be that you ask people to put their suggestions in an anonymous box, the old traditional way. There's the box, write it on a piece of paper and put it in. Or if you wanted to, I remember I was working with this organization many years ago now. They had one of their applications on the computer desktop it was dealing with youth, and they could put their suggestions into this website, and they click it and we go out into the ether because it just gave them a place to vent. In this kind of situation, I'm sure that your IT team can develop an anonymous suggestion system that people can offer a suggestion, and then it's by their choice if they want to identify themselves in making the suggestion or be anonymous and not trackable. So really keeping that confidentiality. Once again, you may find that there's some amazing solutions right underneath your nose that you don't know about. And lastly, work with the human resource team. That's their specialty. If you are having issues, go to them. They may have some tools in their toolbox to assist in helping you get increasing morale in your team or in your section. They're the experts. So please, by all means, go to them. And lastly, this is so important. Keep those promises and commitments. Today, I feel that sometimes we're in quite a disposable society, and even that comes to the extent of going, yeah, I made a promise, but I wasn't really serious about it. And in the workplace, never underestimate the impact that your employment has on a human being. your organization may be the one stop that your employee looks for those promises and looks for those commitments, because he or she may not have that in their own personal and home life. Once again, I thank you very much for your attention on this webinar about increasing or maintaining the morale in your workplace. More than happy for you to connect with me on LinkedIn, and thank you very much for your time in watching this webinar.